All right, I'm gonna set our recording now that I'm remembering. Got it going, and we'll wait a couple more minutes as we've got some more people kind of coming in. Hopefully we'll have some of our businesses join us today. Well, we got one. Kara, she counts two. It's even better. You're double. You count as two. So
Kinda, yeah.
It's especially awesome to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Len, good to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Long time no see.
Glenn, are you in a grocery store?
Pardon?
Are you in a grocery store?
Yeah, no, I'm in a an open space bash is where I'm at. So I'll be on mute, but
All right.
it gets me out of the house a little bit.
Not a bad idea. Yeah.
I'm going to put my I'm going to put our slideshow up. There we go. We got our welcoming screen. Even spelled July right.
Hi, Nikki. Scott here, but I got to go pick my dad up. Yeah, my dad just got released, so I'm going to just put you on mute, and I will be listening as much as I can when I'm not talking to the docs and nurses. So,
fantastic, fantastic. Glad you can listen in.
Yep.
Hope your dad's all right.
Yep, he's doing good. Thanks.
Good. Amber, how's life up in Flagstaff or Williams? Where are you at? Flagstaff or Williams?
Flagstaff, yeah. It's good. It's still hot. I know not 109 degrees like Phoenix, but 80 something.
Oh my goodness.
But there's nothing rain in the forecast for like a week from tomorrow, so I'm hoping that holds.
It'll be nice to finally have some rain come in.
Yeah.
If that can happen. I see the clouds building every day and I'm going, more,
yeah, please. I know.
I was even thinking of washing the car because that's a really great way to get it to rain.
There you go.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet. All right. It's good to see Matt with us today. Thank you for being here, Matt.
Absolutely. Happy that I can help join. Normally I'd be talking to you from southwest of Tucson. I have a home in the Sierrita Mountains, but I was smart and fortunate enough to relocate to Flagstaff for June, July, and August. So I'm enjoying the pines.
I bet. Nate, good to have you on too. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki.
Okay. And I always have to, of course, check all my devices, make sure nobody's getting scared that they can't connect with us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So welcome, everyone. It's good to have you all. This is our July meeting, and we want to say, first and foremost, thank you all for your patience over the last few months as we try to settle on a time and date that works. We've been testing out some different times and days to kind of see what works for people. We haven't quite struck on it yet, and most likely as soon as we do, it'll be a little different. But we keep having our meetings, and those are going really well, I think. I hope that's the feedback I'm getting, is that it helps to have really amazing speakers, and this time we got a double header that's just amazing. So happy to have our speakers today. And I'll go ahead and launch kind of into that. But just a quick overview again about Get Outdoors Arizona, since we have a few new faces with us today. Is Get Outdoors Arizona is hosted by the Arizona Wildlife Federation. And we are the advocacy and educational branch. And GoAZ is our for-profit business coalition for focusing on the outdoor industry. And since COVID started, we decided to kind of focus more on the outdoor industry itself rather than putting our campaigns first and foremost. And then what we found is we did that partly thinking, oh, the legislature is probably not going to have anything done in the next couple months anyway. And things have just been going crazy the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of stuff happening on the legislative front, a lot of wonderful things happening. We had the Great American Outdoors Act passed in the Senate with huge, strong bipartisan support. Now it'll be in front of the House and with a vote next week, which we're getting really excited about. We're sharing lots of letters both on Get Outdoors Arizona and on the Arizona Wildlife Federation site to our House representatives to watch for this for sure, and to encourage our House reps to make sure it happens. So we're looking forward to that. The Recovering America's Wildlife Act was placed under HR 2, the CARES Act, and the House put a lot of great stuff into that act. We're hoping the Senate will take up a lot of those, especially Recovering America's Wildlife Act. And then we get to hear from Amber today. She'll tell us more about the Grand Canyon. So let me get to that agenda. What GoAZ does is AWF is kind of the advocacy platform, and we create these opportunities for you busy business owners to be able to kind of step in at their level, pace, and availability for that time frame, and either do sign-on letters or op-eds, and even live. We have a visit this week with Senator Sinema, and visit this with her staff, Gary Gold, and about select committee on the climate crisis, but also Grand Canyon, we mentioned to them for sure, and GoAZ, we introduced Senator Sinema's office to GoAZ. They were really excited about what we were doing, so that was really, really awesome. But let me tell you a little bit about our speakers. We got Ray Rasker here from he's the Executive Director of Headwaters Economics, and a really amazing site he's going to show us today with tons of research about, well, I'm going to let him talk about it actually, because was way more. I think I went down that rabbit hole for about an hour or so, and I didn't even break the surface. I think just an amazing resource. And then Amber Reimondo she's the Energy Program Director of the Grand Canyon Trust, and we're going to hear some updates about what's going on at the Grand Canyon. And I've been hearing so much. I mean, living in Arizona, of course, we hear so much about the Grand Canyon, but I've also been hearing about the Grand Canyon from a media aspect, and how all the messages, if we use the Grand Canyon in the messages, how much more impactful they are, even if we're just talking to all Arizonans when they see, our canyon is something we absolutely love. So, and then I'll finish this up with a look at our website and see how we're doing on that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Ray take over. I'm looking forward to hearing all this. This is going to be awesome stuff.
Sure. Thanks, and I'll share my screen. Hopefully you can see this pretty soon. Let's see here. Can everybody see that?
There we go. We are up.
You're looking at my screen? Yep. Okay. All right. And for some reason, I've got this very large. I hope that works for you. It's almost crowding out my screen. But so thanks for the invitation. I'm Ray Rasker. I'm with Headwaters Economics. We're a nonprofit research group. We're a think tank, but we also work on the ground with a bunch of different communities. We have a wildfire program. We help communities with land use planning, pass development codes and zoning ordinances to make them safer from wildfire. So we've worked with about 70 communities in that way. We're also working with communities on flooding. So we tend to work with communities that are dealing with extreme events that are exacerbated by climate change. But we're also a think tank. So we also get the privilege of being a bit academic and doing studies on things that are interesting and important and timely. So we've done a bunch of research on public lands. We've done a lot of work on just economic development in general, the relationship between a healthy environment and economic success. We've done quite a bit of work on outdoor recreation. And in this work, one of the things we realized some time ago was that when you talk about the role of outdoor recreation and the role of the environment, it's more and more evident that it's very important to businesses. People decide where to locate a business based in part on the quality of life and access to the outdoors. Business owners use quality of life and access to the outdoors as a way to recruit talent. But what was missing was the business voice. We all knew this. We knew that there was a strong relationship between economic development and a healthy environment. And we knew it was important to business, but businesses basically, we didn't hear from them. So we played a hand as sort of a research support group to a group called Business for Montana's Outdoors. And Business for Montana's Outdoors has a very strong membership across the state and across all sectors. It includes owners of software companies, owners of biotech and medical research companies, as well as the typical outdoor recreation companies like Sims Fishing Products, for example. And it's had a real impact. I mean, in this state, when you run for office, if you don't advocate strongly for the environment, you don't stand a chance. Our Senator Daines is in favor of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Our Congressman Greg Gianforte are in favor of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Neither one of them cares much about conservation, but they know that if they want to run for office and if they want to get reelected, they have to take a pro-environment stance. That, I think, is in large part due to hearing from business voices. Businesses in the state of Montana have made it very clear that if you don't advocate for the environment, politically, you're in shaky ground. So big success. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the work that we've done for businesses for Montana's Outdoors. And we've also done some work for the offices of state offices of outdoor recreation. So here's our homepage. As you can imagine, right now, everybody's talking about COVID, everybody's talking about equity issues. So that's what we're talking about as well. But I'll just show you a few of our products. A few years ago, we produced this very simple 6-page handout on Montana's economy. And I'll show you the last page of it. What we're trying to show here, and this is for a big event hosted by Senator Tester with Businesses for Montana's Outdoors. And we're making the point that public lands have tremendous economic value. They have value for recreation. They have value for heritage and quality of life. They are important for commodity production, important for wildlife, important for scenery, and for clean water. So that's an example of a handout that we used at this event. We also, more recently, there was another event that they held, and we produced another study for them. Basically setting the frame for how to talk about the economic contribution of a healthy environment and outdoor recreation. So that's another example of a study we did for them. Here's one we did for the Montana Office of Outdoor Recreation. They were brand new. They needed something that they could hand out as they traveled around the state. That states the case that there's a need for an Office of Outdoor Recreation. Outdoor recreation is a significant economic player in the state. They deserve a seat at the table. And so this is an example of a publication we did for them. So it's colorful, it's easy to read, it's ideally the sort of thing that you could read while drinking a cup of coffee or drinking a beer. So not too complicated, but it makes the case that outdoor recreation is important. We also, when we talk about funding for outdoor recreation, there's a real gap in the state of Montana. We're one of the few states that doesn't have a statewide funding mechanism for outdoor rec. So we documented, what are the funding gaps that we have? So do we have funding gaps in terms of working landscapes. Turns out to be there's about a $12.4 million a year funding gap there. Is there a funding gap for wildlife? Yeah, there's about a $15 million a year funding gap. State parks, etc. So this information then is being used for a campaign to try and come up with a statewide funding mechanism for the outdoors. More recently, we produced a report for the New Mexico Office of Outdoor Recreation. Also a new office. Just like in Montana, they needed something that they could leave behind that states the case that they're an important economic player in the state. And so we're doing something very similar for Wisconsin as well. We just started a project for them, State Office of Outdoor Recreation. So, so any questions on that or observations? Okay. Well, I'm going to walk you through our website a little bit. Sorry, is somebody talking? Because no. Okay, so I'll walk you through our website a little bit. Here's, one of the areas of expertise that we have is on outdoor recreation. So one of the things that might be useful to you is this library of trail benefits. A lot of communities are advocating for developing infrastructure to get people outdoors. And a lot of communities are saying, let's make an economic argument for that. I mean, what are the economic benefits of a bike path or a hiking trail or new outdoor access? And so what this is, it's a curated list of 140 credible, well-done economic studies on the economic benefits of trails. So you can say, for example, I want to know about business impacts for mountain biking in some recent years in the West. And then you apply that filter and it'll go through the entire library of studies and it'll have all these peer-reviewed, credible studies. So now you've got, basically we've done the literature review for you. And then for each study, you can look at the summary and the interpretation. So what we've done is we've read the report, we've told you what's good about it, the key findings, how you might want to cite the report. So this is something that people use, when they're advocating for trails and investment in outdoor recreation infrastructure. There's, this is sort of, we've done your peer review, literature review for you. So it's a searchable library. And then we also look at what do we know about outdoor recreation communities. So recreation counties tend to attract residents with higher incomes. They're faster growing than non-recreation counties, and they attract people who have deeper pockets. We know about the economic impact of national parks. So there's a data visualization. You can type in the name of your park and it'll tell you how many jobs have been created. But we also have been looking at recreation dependent counties in terms of housing affordability and trying to figure out what are the drivers behind a challenge with housing affordability in recreation counties. So we have a whole part of our website that has outdoor recreation research. So there's dozens of studies in here, and hopefully you can find some time to navigate through. We've also done a lot of work on public lands. When you look at national parks, national monuments, state trust lands, what's the economic contribution of those lands? How do they contribute to economic development? So, there's quite a few studies there that you can navigate through and look at if you'd like. So, and then just economic development in general. There's a whole variety of resources here on anywhere from how we generate electricity to recreation counties. Here's one, for example, recreation the contribution of outdoor recreation by state. So I don't know if you know, but there's two major studies, national studies that have been done. One by the Outdoor Industry Association, where they did a survey of households trying to figure out how much money are people spending on outdoor recreation. And the other study that was done was by the Department of Commerce, by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And that's what this one is. And if you go to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and look at their study, much of their data is hidden. It's sitting in spreadsheets and it's kind of hard to get to. So what we did is we grabbed their data and we made it into a series of 6 little interactive tools. So for example, outdoor recreation, it's big. Well, how big is it? Well, we can look at Arizona and you can find out that it's about 41% less the size of the construction industry. So in relation to another big sector that people know about, how big is outdoor recreation? So it contributes $8.7 billion in terms of contribution to gross domestic product in the state of Arizona. Is it growing faster? Well, let's look at Arizona. We find out that while the rest of the economy, the GDP in Arizona is growing 11%, outdoor recreation's contribution to GDP is growing by 23%. So not only is it a big industry, it's growing much faster. What types of jobs contribute to outdoor recreation? So we can look at it by job type. And so you can look at that. About 50,000 people work in outdoor recreation in arts, entertainment, and accommodation. How about in manufacturing? How many people in the state are working in manufacturing? Well, 2,300 people are working in manufacturing specific to outdoor recreation in the state of Arizona. So this is a tool that lets you then look at the contribution to gross domestic product from outdoor recreation by sector. So the healthcare sector contributes, transportation contributes, retail, et cetera. Finally, we have this little tool and it tells us for the state of Arizona, where is most of the contribution to outdoor recreation coming from? Well, nature-based is bigger than others. So other is like anything that happens like on a soccer field or a tennis field, tennis court, something like that. So nature-based is what you would expect happens in a natural environment outdoors. And the biggest contributor there is the purchase of apparel and accessories, followed by RVing, followed by boating and fishing, other equestrian, hunting and shooting, etc. So you can look at how different activities in the state of Arizona contribute to outdoor recreation. And then finally, is nature-based recreation tends to be bigger and is growing faster. So we can again look at that for Arizona. And you can see the contribution of nature-based activities to outdoor recreation is growing faster than other types of recreation. So this is an example of a tool where we had a data set that we got from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and then our job is to make it available in a intuitive and easy to use fashion. So that's an example of one of our studies. So anyway, that's a whirlwind tour of our website and sort of some of the studies that are available. And let me just leave you with one final sort of navigation to our website, and that across the top, when you click on tools, we have a whole variety of free tools to help you understand the makeup of your local economy. So there's the economic profile system, there's populations at risk, which tells you, as the title would suggest, at-risk populations down to the neighborhood scale. We have neighborhoods at risk, which shows you the overlap between climate risk and neighborhoods where certain people live. library of trail benefits. And then we have very specific tools that we built for the BLM, Fish and Wildlife, and Forest Service that are all publicly available to you. So let me show you an example of the economic profile system. So I'll click on Run Reports, and I can run a report. There's like 14 different thematic reports. I can run a report, and let's just say I want to run a report for Coconino County. So I pick Coconino County, and I press Download Report. And what it's doing when I do this is it's going to our server and it's grabbing data from 12 different federal sources. So Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Census, etc. And it's going to produce on the fly a socioeconomic report. So it produced it, I asked for it in Excel format, so I'll open it up. So I'm opening up this Excel file, and now I produced on the fly a custom socioeconomic profile for Coconino County, Arizona. So it shows you long-term trends. There's a table with data. There's line charts. There's bullet points that interpret the data. And then there's interpretive text. You know, why is this important? Why should I look at these trends? So it's very comprehensive. It provides a ton of information for any geography in the country and for any combination of geographies. So if I want to compare a bunch of counties to each other side by side, I can pick as many geographies as I want, and it'll show you an economic profile comparing them side by side. So that's the economic profile system. And that's, you find that by going to Tools, and then Economic Profile System. And one of the profiles you can run is, down below here, is on tourism. So you can run a specific report for your county or for a group of counties on long-term trends in tourism-related industries. So that's, I'll leave it at that, and I'll just open it up to some questions.
Well, since nobody's jumping in, I will, but hopefully we'll hear some more questions. This is amazing. I didn't realize what does. So this is amazing to hear all these different, not only the resources, but you know, I've definitely gone into that research. How do I make sense of this? So I'm looking forward to going to that Department of Commerce interactive page that you've got going on. I can take a look at that a little bit more. You could talk a little bit more about what you guys do with wildfires, because that's a major important thing in our state. We just had a huge fire, one of our biggest in the history of the state. Can you talk a little bit about what Headwaters Economics does in that, in terms of how to help communities?
Sure.
And then how can we take that and do stuff with it in Arizona, or how can, even, you know, more precise to go AZ, is what can businesses do in terms of wildfires, instead of just seeing opportunities that, you know, being passive while this, you know,
right,
the fire might take away spaces to play.
So our niche in wildfire is very specific around the wildland-urban interface. It's the built environment. It's if you're going to build a home in a dangerous place, it should be built to wildfire resistant standards. And there's a whole variety of ways to accomplish that. So I'll show you a website that shows our program. It's called Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire. It's a program that's funded through the Forest Service. It's a competitive program that communities apply for. We've had 70 communities participate so far. It's a national program. Pinetop Lakeside participated last year. And so what we do through this program is, I'll just show you here the 4 things that we provide. We provide land use planning. So we go through your county comprehensive plan, your zoning ordinances, your landscape ordinances, your building codes. We go through all of it with a fine-tooth comb. And we review it all from a wildfire safety perspective. Do you have in place the regulatory structure to be able to tell people where to build and under what conditions to build? And if you don't, we will rewrite all of those regulations for you. Then the community leaders, the city commission or county commission, they have the option of implementing our recommendations. So it sometimes takes a while. You know, Taos, New Mexico, it took 3 years before they implemented the regulations. Wenatchee, Washington implemented the regulations within 2 months of the end of our program. We stick with the communities sometimes 3-4 years in a row. We also provide wildfire hazard assessments. So we work with the Rocky Mountain Research Station, the Fire Sciences Lab in Missoula, and their modelers provide neighborhood scale wildfire risk maps. And this is useful for county planners and fire departments because it helps them understand where to apply certain regulations, where is it perfectly safe to build, where you might want to have incentives for more development, and where is it very dangerous to build, where you want to discourage development. We do a lot of training workshops, a lot of capacity building workshops. We fly fire departments and people from planning departments to conferences. We put on a lot of training workshops ourselves. And then we have custom research. So for example, one of the questions that has come up a lot is if you build a home to wildfire resistant standards, and you're going to require that, if you build that, if you have a building code that requires wildfire resistant standards, what does that do to the average cost of a home? So we worked with some builders and architects and the Institute for Business and Home Safety, part of the insurance industry. And they're a group that has this really cool job. They light buildings on fire and try and figure out what burns and what doesn't. So they know a lot about how to build a fire-resistant home. And anyway, what we came up with was this study that said, you know, compared a standard home to a wildfire-resistant home. The wildfire-resistant home, oddly enough, is actually 2% cheaper. So it's kind of a wash. You can build a wildfire-resistant home for pretty much the same cost. So this tells elected officials that if you pass an ordinance like this, it's not going to raise the cost of housing. So that's custom research. So, you know, where do we work? We've worked, like, you know, it's all over the country. And then you can see stories of the various places where we've worked. You know, you could look at Bend, Oregon, for example, and then you can hear their story, and then you can download the recommendations that we sent to this community. So that's the community planning assistance for wildfire. I'll show you something on our website that is a complement to this. And we have a tool called Wildfire Risk to Communities. This is something that was mandated in the last omnibus bill. The Forest Service was mandated to make available to all communities across the entire country all of their wildfire hazard mapping. So the Forest Service scientists had all of this data, they had all the information, but they didn't have a way of making it available in an easy to understand fashion for the public. So we built for them this website. So you can go to, let's say, Explore, and then you can type the name of your community. So let's go Flagstaff. And then what it does is it shows you the wildfire hazards in and around Flagstaff. It starts off by displaying it in relation to risk to homes. So you can see where Flagstaff sits in the distribution. There's other places that are more at risk. Arivaca Junction, Pinyon Pines, you know, there's some other places that are even worse. But this gives you a sense of if there were homes present, where would they be at risk? It tells you about the exposure type. Orange is embercast, red is direct flame impingement. So you can see that most of the built environment in Flagstaff is not so much at risk from direct flame impingement, but it's at risk from embers. So where are those embers going to last? Where are they going to land, and what's going to ignite? You can also look at wildfire likelihood. And then you can also learn about vulnerable populations, you know, who lives in these communities and who's most at risk. So this is available nationwide. You can do this for any community. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. Then, you know, the obvious question is, you know, what do we do about this? So there's all these resources for how to reduce risk. And there's 8 things you can do. There's the home ignition zone, there's home hardening, there's land use planning, there's wildfire preparedness. So, you know, on and on, there's all these different things you can do. So let's say I'm interested in the home ignition zone. So I click on read more, and now I'll learn all about the home ignition zone. You know, what is it? So, you know, there's Jack Cohen, the country's expert on the home ignition zone and what makes homes burn. And so there's a video, and you can listen to Dr. Cohen talk about what he's learned through his research. You know, there's different you know, places that you can go to for more help. You know, so anyway, that's from a wildfire point of view. I think this Wildfire Risk to Communities website, and the other one, the Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire, those are 2 programs that we run, but we run them under a different brand. Because, for example, the Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire program, it's a partnership between us and the Forest Service and a group out of Denver called Wildfire Planning International. So we portray it not as a Headwaters item, but as a group effort. So yeah.
Excellent. It's an amazing resource. Before we have you hop off, though, is it I kind of took over with that amazing question, and your amazing answer. Well, the question wasn't all that amazing. Your amazing answer to that. Thank you, Ray. Is there anyone else who wants to pop in with a quick question before before I let Amber take over about Grand Canyon?
I don't have a
any
question.
last questions for Ray?
I don't have a question, but I do want to comment. What a fantastic resource. Really amazing, and I didn't even know it was out there. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you need any help with anything, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You know, we're easy to reach. Just go to our website, and you can go to About Us, and you know, you learn all about who works at Headwaters, and we each have our own cell phone, so we answer our phones directly. So that's our crew right there.
All right. Well, this has been fantastic to have you here. And like I said, you know, I'm going to dive into the website again and just scratch the surface again, I'm sure. And the wildfire sites that you gave us are just amazing. Because that's, you know, this forefront on what everyone's mind too, is we're going to be hit with some, our monsoons bring a lot of lightning. So we're going to see some more fire this season.
Yeah.
For sure.
And we, you know, our take on it is there's a lot of people working on fuel reduction. There's a lot of people working on lots of other stuff, you know, landowner education, but nobody's working on land use planning. Like, how do you pass and enforce regulations, right? And, you know, Flagstaff is one of the leaders in the country, San Diego, Boulder, Colorado, you know, and so in our training workshops, we bring people from Flagstaff to the training workshops and say, look, do what these guys are doing. They're on the right track. And, you know, no community is doing it 100% correctly, but there's a lot to be learned from places like Flagstaff. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Ray, thank you so much for being with us today. What a resource you are, and we're really thankful and honored for you to come out to talk to us today. I know you spent a lot of time going to a lot of different outdoor recreation coalitions and offices, across the country. So we're really thankful to have you with us today.
You bet. I'm going to stay on.
Speaking.
Amber.
Oh yeah. Amber leads an amazing talk about Grand Canyon. If you. She is an absolute wealth of knowledge. So I'm gonna, Ray, I'll have you go ahead and stop your screen share. And then if Amber, if you'd like to take over the screen, you are totally welcome to. Go ahead and start that right away. And again, we are very fortunate to have with us today Amber Reimondo. She's the Grand Canyon Trust is one of our kind of helpers in this, in the sense of like support more than anything else. Just a peer nonprofit that AWF reaches out to very, very often. And we go to the Grand Canyon Trust for our information, and I know whatever they come out with is like, we would take that to the bank for sure. And so Amber and Megan Kelly is with us also, so Amber, I don't have much to say at the end. Pretty much say goodbye. So you are welcome to the next about 18 minutes. And leave a couple minutes for people for having questions, and otherwise it's all you. Thank you so much for being here.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And so like Nikki has told everyone, I'm going to talk about uranium mining in the Grand Canyon region and what is happening to try to protect this region more permanently from the threats of uranium mining. And we don't have a ton of time today, so I feel like there's a lot that I can go into that I'm just not going to today, but I share my email address at the end, so you're more than welcome to reach out if you have additional questions or want to take a deeper dive into any of these rabbit holes that I'm really just going to skim the surface of today. Really briefly, the Grand Canyon Trust, if you're not familiar with us, we are a regional conservation organization. We work across the Colorado Plateau, and our mission is to safeguard the wonders of the Grand Canyon and the Colorado Plateau while supporting the rights of its native peoples. And today, I just want to go through a really brief Uranium 101 in case anybody needs a refresher, or maybe just an introduction to what uranium is, what it's used for, how it's mined, and why mining it in the Grand Canyon region is such an exceptional risk. What's being done to stop that risk, and then how you as the business community can help if you so desire. So uranium is a radioactive heavy metal. It's made up of different isotopes of uranium, and it's very common in the Earth's crust. What's less ubiquitous is where it shows up in high enough concentrations that it's actually attractive for a mining company to come in and mine it. Uranium has a half-life, which is basically, it's the word used to describe how long it takes uranium to decay and become something completely different. So uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years, and that's the half-life of the least radioactive isotope of uranium. So other isotopes take even longer than 4.5 billion years to go away. So that's how long that once we remove it from its stable environment, we have to then manage it and keep it out of the human environment, our air, our drinking water, the soil where we grow our vegetables, etc. And what I mean when I'm talking about like a stable environment, this is something that is really important for folks to understand because it's the subject of a lot of misinformation. In order for uranium to be readily mobile in water, which it is, it's very easy to mobilize when it's exposed to water as long as oxygen is present. So when I say that uranium deposits are relatively stable where they are, that's because they have reached a place. The reason they formed in the first place is because oxygen is no longer available in that location. As trace amounts of uranium from anywhere in the Earth's crust and soil, etc., over millions of years was transported through water down into the Earth, it reaches a place where oxygen is no longer available. And at that point, it comes out of solution and starts to form this more concentrated deposit of uranium. And that is really important when we're talking about uranium mining because mining re-exposes that uranium to oxygen. And sometimes it also introduces water, even though in a lot of cases, water was already there. It was just that it wasn't taking up the uranium because the oxygen wasn't there. So uranium exposes the ore to the elements, and that's when we get into trouble. That's when we start seeing that high mobility in water. And so what you see here in the photos, the upper left-hand corner is an example of what uranium ore looks like. It's rock. Most of it is rock and other things, and a small portion of it is actually uranium oxide. Then from there, it's taken to a mill where it's crushed and run through a milling process that's usually pretty acidic. And everything else goes into these tailings impoundments where they stay in perpetuity more often than not. And then the rest of it is what you see in the upper right-hand corner. That's called yellow cake. That's concentrated uranium oxide. And then it has to go from there through further enrichment processes in order to become useful as a fuel rod in a nuclear fuel facility, or even more enrichment to become something like a nuclear bomb. There are a few different kinds of mining, a few different ways of mining uranium. We're going to talk about one today, but just for your information, there's in situ mining, which is more common in places like Wyoming and Nebraska and Texas. That's where several, or hundreds often, of wells are drilled into a uranium-bearing formation, and a chemical solution is pumped down to dissolve the uranium, bring it back up, and take the uranium out of solution. There are lots of concerns with that because, namely, in order to operate a mine like that, you have to get an aquifer exemption from the Safe Drinking Water Act, which basically just says, yes, the EPA is giving you permission to permanently contaminate this groundwater. There's also open pit mining, which has other concerns. And then the type we'll talk about today is underground mining, because this is the type of mining that will happen, or does happen, around the Grand Canyon. And what you see here is a characterization of what a typical uranium mine in the Grand Canyon region would look like. So the type of uranium deposit in this region is, it happens in something called a breccia pipe. A breccia pipe is a geologic formation that started millions of years ago. So down, you see at the bottom of, you see the vertical feature here. This is the breccia pipe. And at the bottom, down here in the red wall limestone, there were these caverns. And millions of years ago, as those caverns collapsed, additional layers of rock collapsed on top of that, all the way up to the surface. And over those millions of years, this broken rock was very, water could easily flow through it. And so again, like I talked about at the beginning, water carrying trace amounts of uranium over millions of years carried the uranium down, and right around here, it ran out of oxygen and started creating this more concentrated deposit of uranium and other things too, like arsenic and other mineralized deposits. Down here at the bottom in the red wall limestone is also the location of a really important aquifer that serves a lot of the seeps and springs inside the Grand Canyon. It's the water source for the town of Tucson, for Grand Canyon National Park, and really importantly, it's the source of water for Havasu Creek, which flows through Subai Village. Let me just skip to that really in a second. But the other important thing to note here is that, like I said, this is a characterization. This is not a perfect image of what the geology looks like. And the main kind of linchpin here in terms of talking about the elevated level of risk that we see with uranium mining around the Grand Canyon is that the hydrology, the groundwater flow, the direction of that groundwater flow, the speed of that groundwater flow is really highly variable. And it's really difficult to predict, and it's going to be different from place to place. And that's because all of these rock layers are highly fractured. So what we might think of as being a confining layer, for instance, the Supai group is in general a confining layer, which means it serves as a barrier between upper layers of rock and lower layers of rock. Could actually be, and is actually in many places, fractured, or there's a fault that goes through it, which then allows water to easily flow through. And this is a picture of one of the falls down in Supai Village. Havasu Creek flows from the Redwall aquifer, which is sometimes called the R aquifer. And if this lower aquifer ever were to become contaminated from mining that happens up on the surface, that's a really big problem for lots of folks, including the Havasupai tribe, who we've been talking about tourism and how tourism drives economies. And this Havasu Creek is the sole economic driver for the village of Supai, as well as the sole source of water for that community. And this is not the topic of today's discussion, but I really just have to mention very quickly the larger net, the bigger impact that uranium mining that happens in the Grand Canyon region has on the broader Colorado Plateau. So the picture up in the upper left is Canyon Mine. We'll talk more about that in a minute. That's one example of a mine on the South Rim that is currently not mining ore, but if it ever did start mining ore, that ore would be trucked across. So this is the proposed haul route. There were two options. This upper option went across some private land owned by Babbitt Ranches and I think some BLM land as well. That's not actually going to happen, but so the confirmed route, if they did start mining ore, would be to take it down through Williams, Flagstaff, and then across the Navajo Nation up to the White Mesa Mill, which is the last remaining conventional uranium mill in the country. It's owned by a company called Energy Fuels Resources, which also owns Canyon Mine. And this is a picture of it down here on the bottom of the slide. This mill is just outside of Bears Ears National Monument, just north of Bluff, Utah, and about 3 miles-ish north and up gradient. So groundwater flows from the direction of the mill towards the Ute Mountain Ute community of White Mesa. And there is there's confirmed contaminated shallow groundwater aquifers beneath the mill. Energy Fuels denies having had anything to do with that. But the Ute Mountain Ute community is concerned that their water, which comes from a deeper aquifer beneath that, the Navajo aquifer, could be contaminated someday. So this is just really important in terms of the broader impact. Also important in terms of the broader impact is the toxic legacy that already exists from past uranium mining that's happened in the Southwest. So on the Navajo Nation by itself, there are still over 500 abandoned uranium mines that haven't been cleaned up, and they continue to contaminate soil and groundwater. The last study I saw found that 29 water sources on the Navajo Nation exceeded drinking water standards for radionuclides, including uranium. And a recent study by the University of New Mexico, I think it happened, or at least the results were released last year, over 700 women on Navajo Nation were tested, and over a quarter of them were found to have elevated levels of uranium in their bodies. So this is something that's still impacting people today. The bottom left photo here is right on the south rim of Grand Canyon. This is actually taken from one of the overlooks, looking back at the rim. This is Orphan Uranium Mine. It operated until about 1970. The head frame is now gone. This is you wouldn't look at it and necessarily know it's a uranium mine now, but it's still a hot site. It's an ongoing federal cleanup site, and the rim trail has been diverted to go around it. And below Orphan Mine is Horn Creek, and Horn Creek is contaminated with elevated levels of uranium. So if you're hiking along Horn Creek, the National Park Service warns you not to drink that water unless death by thirst is the only other option. And this is the kind of interest that we see in uranium mining in the Grand Canyon region. So here's Grand Canyon National Park through the center of the map. On the north rim, on all this BLM land, this is the level of mining claims. Each of these orange dots represents a mining claim that was filed back in 2000, or that was in existence back in 2008. And the same thing here, and this is, so each of these, we'll talk about this in a second, but each of these boundary lines, there are 3 parcels, are the boundaries of a current temporary mining ban that was put in place in 2012. And so I guess the reason I want to show this map is just so that you understand that this isn't just a one-off, that people may or may not want to mine, or if somebody does, it just be one mine. Like, this is the kind of interest that we've had in the region prior to the current temporary mining ban. And again, I should add, these are claims. They have not been developed necessarily. The ones with actual radioactive signs, those have gone through some level of the permitting and development process, or they've actually been mined out, like Kanab North and Pine Nut Mine. Arizona 1 has been built, it's just not in operation. And then Canyon Mine here on the South Rim. So because of all of that interest, that all those mining claims that were staked back in the 2007 to 2010 period, there were over 10,000 mining claims staked in the region by 2010. The map you just saw showed just over 8,000 because it's from 2008. That really sparked some concern for a lot of people, especially in Northern Arizona, who have been living with this ongoing toxic legacy of uranium mining. And a broad coalition of people, sportsman groups, like including the Arizona Wildlife Federation, businesses, local governments, tribal governments, all came together and asked the administration at the time to institute an administrative mining ban. So that happened in 2012. Then Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar announced a 20-year mining ban on about 1 million acres of public lands that are adjacent to Grand Canyon National Park. So where that map that you just were looking at, this is Forest Service and BLM land adjacent to the national park. And a 20-year ban is as long as a mining ban can be put in place administratively. Anything longer than that has to be put in place by Congress. And there are some risks we see. The reason we're not just sitting tight until 2032 when the ban expires is that there's some risk that an administration could attempt to lift that ban. We would argue that that's not possible, that wouldn't be legal, and we would fight it, but not everything is necessarily determined by precedent these days. So that kind of activity, that kind of interest has been ongoing since the beginning of the Trump administration. We've seen several actions that I won't go into, but happy to expand upon those if you want to email me afterward, that have increased, or rather smoothed out, the pathway toward easier access for uranium mining across the country, but particularly around Grand Canyon National Park. And so really quickly on Canyon Mine is, as you might remember from looking at that map, is within the boundaries of that 20-year mining ban, but because the Forest Service determined that it has what are called valid existing rights, it's allowed to move forward despite the mining ban. It's been permitted since 1986, so 2 years before I was born, and to this day, they have not mined a single ton of ore. They have, however, finished digging their 1,400-foot mine shaft, and in 2016, that mine shaft started taking on significant amounts of water. And like we've talked about, water in a uranium mine is incredibly dangerous, and especially in this region where we don't fully understand where all the fractures and faults and connectivities are in groundwater flow. And so, and I guess the other point to make here is that the miner from the very beginning made all of these assurances, pretended that they knew more than they did about the groundwater flow in the region, that they assured regulators that there wasn't going to be water in the mine, that any groundwater, if it existed in the area, was at least 1,000 feet below the depth of the mine. And obviously, this isn't true. Since 2016, the mine has taken on over 30 million gallons of water, and that groundwater is most likely, it is very contaminated, and it's most likely very contaminated because it flowed into the mine shaft where ore has already been exposed through the digging of the mine shaft. And it goes into this on-site impoundment here. So again, I can't go into all of the details, but we did recently publish this report if you're interested and have time. It's on our website. It's called Canyon Mine, Why No Uranium Mine is Safe for the Grand Canyon Region, and it's based on years of research by the Trust and by other of our partners who have done deep dive records requests, especially with Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, to learn all kind of the nitty-gritty details about all the problems that Canyon Mine has had and how the company has tried to feign this confidence that everything's fine, even though despite not having started mining, it's already an ongoing disaster site. And it's already posing a threat to groundwater and particularly the Red Wall Moab aquifer. So what are we doing? Right now, we are trying to pass the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act. And the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act is, it would make that temporary ban permanent. It doesn't do anything different. It's the same boundaries. It's everything is the same. It just goes from being a 20-year ban to a permanent mining ban. This bill was introduced last year by Congressman Grijalva, and I don't remember now off the top of my head how many co-sponsors, but it was over 100 co-sponsors. It passed the House of Representatives in late October, and then Senator Sinema introduced the Senate version of the act in December. So at this very moment, it's sitting in the Senate. It's awaiting a Senate hearing before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and it also needs co-sponsors. So, of course, the pandemic has created a little bit of an additional obstacle here because there are a lot on senators' priority lists that isn't the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act, but this is where it stands. And if it isn't passed through the Senate by the end of this Congress, so the end of this year, then we have to start all over again. And that's not necessarily the end of the world. We've made a lot of progress, gotten a lot of recorded support that might make having to restart the process a lot smoother than having to start over from square one. But that's where things are, nevertheless. So what can you do as members of the business community? I put up some examples here. One thing that could be really helpful is that in the Senate, the political environment is a little different when it comes to environmental protections. And so because of that, it's really important for your senators, or for senators in particular, in this case, Senator McSally, in the case of Arizona, to hear from Arizona businesses saying that we need her to take a stance and support the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act. You can call your senators and urge them to co-sponsor the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act. So of course, Senator Sinema is the one who sponsored it to begin with, but Senator McSally is someone else that would be really helpful if she would join the bill. And then you can spread this to your network. So this could be just sharing this information. It could be talking to other folks in your business network. It could be contacting me and letting me know you're interested in writing an op-ed. You don't have to contact me, but I'm just happy to be a resource if that's helpful. Op-eds really do speak to a lot of these decision makers, especially in our local papers. So that's actually something that could be really helpful. And then Matt Nelson, who's on here, also had something else that he wanted to talk about in terms of what you all could do if you feel so inclined.
Thanks, Amber. Great presentation. I'll make this really quick too, because I know we're probably running over time. But what we found that with our membership in Arizona Trail Supporters, which is tens of thousands of people within the state of Arizona that identify as outdoor recreationalists who care about the Grand Canyon, care about the Arizona Trail, we see this as a major issue because the trail goes right through hundreds, if not thousands, of those mining claims, and there's really no way to send the trail around that pinch point, which is Grand Canyon. And so what we've heard a lot when we've done calls to action is that some people are unwilling to take the time to call or write members of Congress. And so what we've done, and if I can do a share screen, I'll kind of show you really quickly what we're doing. Basically, we've developed a way for people. Can you see the screen yet?
No, you might be. Did you do the screen share?
Yep. How about now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is just a very simple postcard campaign that we intend to launch within the next 2 weeks. So it's not ready yet, but as soon as it is, I would love for everybody to share this with their networks. And it gives you an opportunity to send a postcard to both of our senators. It takes less than a minute to create. So if you were to go to keepitgrand.net, basically what you do is you confirm that this is your email address. And then next, you can either choose a pre-formatted photograph, which we've chosen, or what we're encouraging people to do is upload your own photo. If you have a picture of you on the Arizona Trail, on the South Rim of Grand Canyon, or at the canyon itself, upload that, because real people at these locations have the biggest impact on elected representatives. After you hit next, you can pick a slogan, or you can write your own. So we have a couple that are listed here, but then you can even write your own as well. Click next, and then there's a pre-formatted message that basically says, I care about Grand Canyon, I care about the Arizona Trail, I recognize that mining has played an important role in our history and our future, but it does not belong here at Grand Canyon, especially when it comes to uranium. You can adjust this message to completely write your own, or just use the text. Hit next, confirms that this is your name and information. Hit next, and then basically it gives you an opportunity to review it to make sure that you're happy with everything. And as soon as you hit send postcard, it prints with your information on it and sends it directly to McSally and Cinema in their Arizona offices. It's completely free to the user, takes less than a minute to do, and our hope is that we can generate tens of thousands of these specifically to target Senator McSally.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and I would add too that, I mean, while Senator Cinema has sponsored this bill, I think it's still really important that she hears from you to say thank you. And these sorts of, like a postcard like this would just help to reinforce the decision that she's made to introduce this bill. And if it has to be reintroduced again, it would be good for her to feel like this is something that Arizonans across the board want to see happen. And the other thing I just wanted to say really quickly is that the temporary ban was put in place by this broader coalition. So I am from a nonprofit environmental group, and just because I have this message to share with senators, that's not really going to move folks. And so it's really important that they hear from everyone else who's not in the typical, like, we want environmental protections group. And so hearing from businesses and hearing from sportsmen and healthcare providers have spoken up in support of the ban because of the concern of uranium getting into drinking water and how it's already causing chronic instances of cancer on Navajo Nation. So really, I think this group in particular has the potential to make a big difference in this campaign.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber, for all that information too, and the update of what's going on, and that really simple action that people can take. We have the letters, of course, on GoAZ and Arizona Wildlife Federation, and I know your sites have ways to do that too. But I love this postcard. That's gonna really make an impact, I think, a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. It's a great showing of partnership, and that's not where I wanted to go. Here's our website while I'm here. I'm just going to take a minute and say goodbye, but also, a little plug for our website. It's looking great. We have now an events page, and it will show you. Is that page coming up?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. It shows our previous meetings, and that's where you can get the recordings of our meetings that we've had in the past. So it's a really easy way to catch up on those past meetings and all our elaborate, wonderful speakers that we've had in the past. And then here's our connections, Facebook, Instagram. We're doing those profiles on Facebook, and they're being posted on Instagram too. We do at least 3 times, whoever does a profile. And we have over 2,000 people on Facebook now. So we've been doing paid ads. They're really paying off. We're getting a lot of people excited about the Business Coalition. We've had several more businesses join us that hadn't heard about us until they saw an ad on Facebook, which was pretty awesome. And then it's also a way that we're sharing our campaign information as well. So and getting people outside recreating. So like I said, hitting both of those, the campaigns and advocacy that we're doing, but also boosting the outdoor economy here in Arizona And when we see great stuff from other states going, you know, here's a great idea too. We've a couple hashtags. We've got Recreate Responsibly and Responsible Recreation that are going on there. One's from more of the hunting community and another one's more from the non-consumptive community. So, which is awesome that both those voices are there doing kind of the same thing, is getting the outdoor recreation economy back on its feet. And so with that, I'm going to say, any other questions for our two amazing speakers that we've had today? You can just unmute and pop up.
I'll just say quickly, Nikki, if you want to share my email address with folks, happy to just talk offline too.
Great, great. And if anybody has any more questions, especially that I need to send to Ray, I'd be happy to do that for you. Especially after you get digging around on that site. That's where I went, oh my goodness, this is amazing stuff. So with that, I'll say goodbye. We don't have a date yet for our August meeting. And so you'll see that in a bit, and you'll see an email from me in the next couple days inviting you to the recording, but also kind of an update on on other stuff that we've got going on. And a plea to connect with our House of Representatives for the Great American Outdoors Act vote that's coming up next Tuesday, which will be awesome. And otherwise, I'll say thank you again so much to our speakers, and thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks so much.